8-Whack is an old deck known for being budget friendly, but it's a very near and dear deck to my heart because it's the first deck I ever got a 5-0 with in modern leagues. The reason that this deck is so powerful for it being so cheap is because it simply doesn't care about powerful cards because it'll just kill the opponent. And the namesake cards of this deck are Reckless Bushwhacker and Goblin Bushwhacker. Reckless Bushwhacker is a 3-mana 2/1 with haste that reads, search, pay 1 colorless and a red. You may cast a spell for a surge cast if you or a teammate has cast another spell this turn. When Reckless Bushwhacker enters the battlefield, if its surge cost was paid, other creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. And Goblin Bushwhacker is a 1-mana 1/1 that reads, kicker, pay 1 red. You may pay an additional red as you cast a spell. When Goblin Bushwhacker enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. In the past, these Bushwhackers would power out 1 or 2 other creatures because the deck would play 20-ish 1-drops. But in recent times, people have completely innovated and changed the way this deck plays. In the current build, we are trying to abuse Kuldaltha Rebirth and Gleeful Demolition. Gleeful Demolition is a 1-mana sorcery that says destroy target artifact. If you control that artifact, create 3 1/1 red Phyrexian Goblin creature tokens. And Kuldaltha Rebirth is a 1-mana sorcery that says as an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice an artifact, create 3 1/1 red Goblin tokens. So that means if we have a turn 1 Gleeful Demolition or Kuldaltha Rebirth, sacking or killing a Mistress Bauble or a Memnite, turn 2 we can have 8 attacking power. And in this video, we are going to even have 10 power on turn 2. So we are going to be trying out this deck in a modern league and seeing just how busted it really is. For game 1, our starter's a little slow, but we'll end up keeping it. Opponent fetches out a swamp and inquisitions us, and they end up taking our Memnite. We find a Den, we'll play that, play our star, and pass the opponent. And they have another inquisition, taking a Goblin Bushwhacker, and they do nothing else. We find a Reckless Bushwhacker. Gonna sack the star, draw a card, find a Synthesizer. We'll just kick out this Goblin Bushwhacker and attack for 2. And they find a Hallowed Fountain off the Marsh Flat, so I think this might be Reanimator. Opponent plays out a Sunken Ruin into a Teferi. We find a Synthesizer, we'll play one on the mount, exiling a Shrapnel Blast. We'll play out our Sokinzon and Shrapnel Blast the Teferi down, attacking the Synthesizer. And we find a Goblin Grenade, but we cannot cast it. And our opponent's down to 15. Opponent taps out on their turn, casting an Esper Charm, making us discard 2. We'll discard Bushwhacker and Grenade. Find a Bauble, so we'll just play out Synthesizer first. Exiling a Reckless Bushwhacker, so we'll cast that with Surge. Cast out our Bauble and attacking for 4. Bauble them on the upkeep. Opponent does nothing, holding up Drown. Found a Gleeful Demolition, so we will use that, destroying our Synthesizer. An opponent counters it. Go around another Synthesizer. Finding a Bauble, and we'll attack in for 3. And then we'll Bauble them on the upkeep again, seeing a counter spell. Opponent casts a Charm, drawing 2, finding a fetch land. We find a land and a Kuldaltha Rebirth. They'll use a Rebirth, sacking a Synthesizer, finding a land. They fetch Shock and cast Drown Lock on it. They'll play our land, we'll activate a Synthesizer, getting a 2/2, and exiling a Memnite, which they can actually cast. And we attack in for 3, putting them down to 2. An opponent scoops them up. Let's get on to sideboarding. We're going to take out 3 Goblin Grenades for Blood Moon effects. Game number 2, we have a turn 1 Gleeful Demolition, so we'll keep. We find another Bushwhacker. We're going to fetch out a mountain here. And to play around a turn 1 Fatal Push, we're going to cast Rebirth rather than Demolition. An opponent just finds a Rafine's Tower on our end step. They play out another tower. This Blood Moon's looking great. Find a Sokinzon. So we'll attack in for 3. Play out Islet and pass. Opponent runs out of Swamp into a temporary lockdown. We find a Rebirth, so we'll play land and slam our Blood Moon. Opponent runs out of Mountain. We find another Kuldaltha Rebirth, so we'll just cast out a Bushwhacker. And they have a Timeless Dragon, which they cycle, finding the plains. An opponent just scoops them up there. Let's get into match number 2. For match number 2, we're on the draw, but we got turn 2 8 power, so we got to keep. Opponent goes turn 1 plains into Sigarda's Aid. You draw a mountain. We'll cast out Memnite, cast out Bauble, and we're going to sacrifice the Bauble to do some extra damage. Opponent plays out a Saga into a Stoneforge Mystic, and they find a Colossus Hammer. We find another Rebirth, so we will just Bushwhack, and we'll attack for 10. Opponent just takes it. Let's hope they just don't have double hammer here to kill us. They run out another Saga, cast another Stoneforge, grabbing a Shadow Sphere, but I think that we're going to have the kill here. We find another Bushwhacker off the top, so we cast Rebirth, sacking the Memnite, Surge our Reckless Bushwhacker, and Math is for blockers. And opponent scoops him up. Let's get on to sideboarding. We're going to take out 4 Gleeful Demolition, a Shrapnel Blast, and 2 Goblin Grenades for Magus, Blood Moon, and Shattering Sprees. Game 2, our hand's a little slow, but I'm going to keep it. Opponent fetch Shocks and finds a Scamp. We have a fetch land, so we're going to play Bauble ourselves, and do the Bauble trick. We don't want another Bushwhacker, so we're going to end up fetching that away. We'll run out our 1/1. Find another Bauble off of our Bauble. They play out an Ink Moth into a Hammer, and they attack us for 1. We'll try and trade. and they have a Magnetic Theft. Draw lands, we're going to bobble ourselves, finding a star, and opponent just has us here because they can sack this and it'll just deal 11 to us, and it already deals 11. So we're into game number 3. Game 3, our hand looks great, so we'll keep it. So we'll just cast Memnite and Mistress Bauble and play out our land. Opponent just plays out of Plains. Look at our top card in the end step, and we do not want a Shrapnel Blast, so we'll fetch that away. When we find 2 lands, just play out Den and attack in for 1. Opponent plays out a Saga and does nothing else. Find a Bushwhacker, so we'll fetch, play Mountain, play out a Bushwhacker, and surge out our other. Attack in for 6. And opponent's down to 13. Opponent casts out an Ornithopter, does nothing else. Find a Bushwhacker, so we're going to surge this, and we're going to attack with everything. Opponent makes that a Construct. They block the Reckless Bushwhacker with the Construct. They're down to 7, and I decide to spree this Ornithopter. Opponent activates Saga before it sacks, getting a 1/1. They find an Ornithopter off of it. When we find a star, they'll play Star and crack it. Finding a Bushwhacker, so we'll surge this out. We're going to send in with the team. An opponent blocks both. Now they're down to 3 without a board state. They run out of Plains, play Hallowed Moonlight, and scoop them up. Get into match number 3. For match number 3, we're on the draw with a great hand. Opponent just goes turn 1 Scalding Tarn. You find another land. We're going to go turn 1 Mountain into Mistress Bauble, casting a Gleeful Demolition on it. And we're going to save our Memnite so that we can surge out the Bushwhacker next turn. On our end step, they find a Steam Vince, then they play out a Saga into a Ledger Shredder, casting a Mistress Bauble, Conniving, and they discard an Unholy Heat, giving Shredder a +1/+1 counter. Find a Bauble, so we're going to Goblin Grenade this Shredder, sacking a Goblin, attack in for 2, fetch out a Mountain, play a Synthesizer, exiling Mountain, and then we will play out our Memnite. Opponent shocks into Foundry and passes, holding up Saga activation. Find another Bushwhacker, we'll cast our Bauble, surge out Bushwhacker, we attack in for 8, opponent makes out a Construct, and trades with a Memnite, and they fall down to 9. We bobble them on the upkeep, seen an Underworld Breach. Before Saga dies, they make out a Construct, Saga finds a Springleaf Drum, and opponent doesn't play out a land. We find a Synthesizer and a Kadoltha Rebirth, we'll cast the Rebirth, trying to spike a land. We find a Star, we'll play out another Synthesizer, and we do not find a land. Unfortunate. We'll attack in for 2, offer the trade. An opponent does not block. Opponent casts out a Shredder, plays out a tapped land, and we find a Bauble, great draw. Cast that, surge out our Bushwhacker, and hope that's game. And mass for blockers. An opponent scoops him up. Let's get on to sideboarding. And I don't think there's anything we really want in this matchup too badly, so we're just going to submit it back. Game number 2, our hand's perfectly fine. Opponent just goes Aired Mesa. We find a Shrapnel Blast, so we'll bobble ourselves. Top card is another Bushwhacker. We definitely want that one, so we'll play out an Epicure into a Memnite. End step, our opponent fetch shocks and cast an Unholy Heat on our Memnite. Opponent just runs out a Mountain. We find a land off the top. We will fetch Grabbing Mountain, and we will kick a Bushwhacker, back in for 4. An opponent just Unholy Heats our Epicure, taking 2. Opponent untaps, cast an EI, exiling an Urza's Saga, playing out Saga. We find another land off the top. We'll just kick another Bushwhacker, attack opponent for 4. And since we have 10 points of burn in our hand, we're going to Goblin Grenade them and hold up Shrapnel Blast for the rest of the game, trying to find an opportunity to cast this and kill them. Opponent plays out a fetch and passes. We find Gleeful Demolition. We'll play out our land, attack in for 1. And we'll just pass and see if they activate Saga. They go for the Saga, so we'll just go for Shrapnel Blast. Usually they only run Spell Pierce as counter spells, so I think this will work. Wow, and we got the game. Let's get into match number 4. For match number 4, we are on the play, but we got a mull because we don't have any lands. And our 6 looks amazing, so we'll keep it and put back a Kadoltha Rebirth. We'll do turn 1 Mountain into Epicure. Opponent goes turn 1 Bloodstained Mire. We find another Epicure. They'll just go to attacks and just run another Epicure. I'm a little afraid this is scam, so we're not going to run out Gleeful Demolition just yet. Opponent fetches a Mountain and bolts one of the Epicures. Then they shock in a Stomping Ground, play a Renin 6, and ping down our Epicure. So we're really looking for a land here, and we find one off the top. They'll fetch up 2 mountains, cast out Gleeful Demolition, surge out a Bushwhacker, because we can kick this one regardless next turn. They'll Ren and attack the opponent for 6, and they're down to 8. They cast out a Bitter Union, which means they're probably on creativity, discarding an Archon, then just plays out a fetch land. And another Gleeful Demolition, we'll cast that, kick out a Bushwhacker, and I'm pretty sure this should be lethal. An opponent scoops them up, let's get into sideboarding. We're going to take out 1 Breach and 3 Gleeful Demolitions for 3 Ovar and a Blood Moon. For game 2, our starter looks amazing. Opponent goes turn 1 fetch, we'll play our fetch land out into a Chromatic Star, and we'll also cast a Bauble, holding on to Memnite because we don't want this to get Renin 6 ping down. Opponent plays out a Mountain into a Bitter Union, and we'll bobble them now. We see a land on top, and they discard a Bolt. Find a Bushwhacker into a Blood Moon. So I'm going to run out Synthesizer, find a Bauble, and we will fetch and cast Rebirth, Sacking Star. Find another land, which means we can Blood Moon next turn if we'd like. Opponent just plays out a tap Stomping Ground. We'll bobble them again. Gain an Aired Mesa, find a Bushwhacker, and an Epicure. And I think we're just going to push damage here. We're going to play Epicure, cast a Memnite, and surge out a Bushwhacker. And this means that they're probably going to have to go for creativity, and we have that covered with Ovar. Opponent's down to 6, and our board's pretty menacing. Opponent fetches for a Dwarven Mine, then cast creativity, fighting Archon. So we will sack a Goblin, discard Ovar, which means we get our own Archon, and this game should be over. An opponent scoops him up. Let's get into the 5-0 match. For match number 5, we are on the draw on the hand, just a little too land heavy, so we're going to mull. And we have another land heavy hand, so we're going to go to 5. Our 5 looks perfectly fine. And I'm just going to put back both Epicures and try and play to the board. We find a star, which is actually a pretty good draw. So we'll go turn 1 star and double Meta Knight. On our end step, they find a Triome, and they are in Giganta, so I'm pretty sure this is Zoo. An opponent plays out a Kavu, so this is Zoo. We find a Bushwhacker, so we're going to go Rebirth, stacking star, find another star, and getting 3/1/1s. But we just got to pass here. Opponent casts out a Scion and attacks in for 5. And they discard a Leyline Binding and draw. We find another Mem Knight, so we're just going to cast Synthesizer. Hopefully we can find a land off this. Opponent fetch shocks and cast a Stubborn Denial on this. Nope, we'll send in with the team. They kill a Mem Knight. They're down to 10. We'll play out another Mem Knight. Opponent attacks in for 9, discarding a Bolt and drawing a card. We're not going to block. We're down to 5. And opponent just Tribal Flames us out, so let's get on to sideboarding. We're going to take out an Underworld Breach for a Blood Moon. Game 2, our hand's a little risky, but I think it's worth it. So I'm going to lead on Bauble, targeting ourselves. We see land on top, great draw. So I'm going to Mem Knight and Goldalta Rebirth and try and go for 8 damage on turn 2. Opponent just plays out a land and passes. Find another Bushwhacker. We'll play Mountain and kick this Bushwhacker. Back in for 8. Opponent's down to 12. Opponent plays out a Wooded Foothills, fetches a basic forest, and plays out a Nishobi Brawler. We find an Epicure, so we're going to lead on Synthesizer. Finding a land, so we'll fetch out a Mountain and search a Bushwhacker. An opponent blocks the Bushwhacker and goes down to 2. They play out a Floodstrand, and they scoop it up. Time for the biggest match of our lives. For game 3, our star looks reasonable. Opponent goes fetch shock for Wild and Color on turn 1. We find another star. We'll play out a star. Star was also a great draw. They play out a Savai Triome and attack in for 3. We find a Synthesizer. We'll play land, play Rebirth, stacking star, find another land, and then we'll run out of star. They Stubborn Denial that, which is fine. Opponent attacks in for 3. We'll take it. Then cast out a Kavu. We find a star. We'll play star. Cast Rebirth, stacking star. Find another Rebirth. We'll play Wooded Foothills, and I think we're just going to grenade this Kavu. Attacking one of the tokens. Attack in for 3. Opponent attacks us, and I think we should jump here so we don't die to double Tribal Flames. Cast out another Nicodle and just pass. We find a grenade. We're going to cast a Synthesizer, exile a land, cast a Rebirth, exiling a Reckless Bushwhacker, and we'll surge that out. And we can go for lethal here, but I think I want to play around Lightning Bolt, so we'll just tack in with all these, hold back 2 blockers, they kill our Bushwhacker, and they're down to 4, which means Goblin Grenade next turn is lethal, and we have double chump as well. They bolt us, so happy we didn't go for the win. And opponent scoops him up, let's go! Let's go. Wow, what an amazing 5-0 with this list. It felt super smooth the entire league. We actually had some pretty good top decks. We didn't mulligan too much, but the deck's definitely aggressive. It's better than, traditional 8-whack in my opinion, and it has some really cool explosive starts, and it can grind pretty well. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. Without further ado, I hope you all enjoyed. Please consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.